see how this works out. Page 39. Our planners, once thwarted in their utopian vision of 2 or 3 big nuclear reactors, still talk grandly of coal plants. With the new scrubbers, of course, the fuel is to be mined in Utah and sent rolling in here each morning. For miles, a constant roar of 100 train cars clanking in and unloading at a time. The mountains on each side of this very level valley create good acoustics. People on the coast of the more maritime and elite cultures, where ocean breezes blow the fossil smoke eastward, to us, who play Athens to our Thebes, still block power plant construction. We of this basin, who live where the offal, OFFAL, goes up a few feet and stays, welcome them in. Without additional electrical power, there can be no more people, only raisins and plums. In short, we in the valley have come full circle. If in 1850 our valley was untapped and useless ground for farming, so too it will be again by 2050 when the room, water, and air are exhausted. There are a few places still. One small tract lies on our own farm that have never been cultivated and thus serve as museum pieces of the natural landscape before the 19th century arrival of the exploiting man. Such ground is, of course, ugly, full of weeds and wild willow. By May it is no more than scorched earth, its natural potential somnolent, sleeping but for the coming of man. That pristine lot is, forgive me, a natural trash heap that the local ecologists describe as a rare, pristine ecosystem full of indigenous grasses and insects. Hi, do you mind if I read? Okay. And insects. That weedy blot does offer a radical contrast to the verdant trees and vines that surround. The former gives no life to man, the latter bounty to those who would work. Despite what the university pundit says, that quarter-acre of unspoiled waste is nature's wild fraternal twin to man's nearby Taco Bell and Automall. Both are ugly in their own unique way. Both are part of no real cultura. A century later, our latest local contribution to civilization's bareness, every bit a match for that land useless without man, is down the road next to the interstate. An edge city growing along the 99 freeway, 1.5 miles from this farm. There, man is in abundance. There, in my own small town, no better or worse than the others, we have torn up vineyards and now have planted the following crops: Walmart, Burger King, Food for Less, Baskin-Robbins, Cinema Six, Denny's, Wendy's, Payless, Anderson's, Pea Soup, the Holiday Inn, McDonald's, Carl's Jr., Taco Bell, 4 gas stations, 3 shopping centers, 2 video stores, and a car wash. An overnight Emporiopolis, a modern caravan stop to serve 100,000 drivers, 24 hours a day. Its neon, smoke, and noise are an enticing Antioch or Tyre, a reminder, like our section of Scrub, that both man and nature in their extreme can be altogether ugly creations, without any of the beauty of the farm in between. We should recall Mr. Crevecoeur about growing man the plant. Men are like plants. The goodness and flavor of the fruit proceeds from the peculiar soil and exposition in which they grow. We are nothing but what we derive from the air we breathe, the climate we inhabit, the government we obey, the system of religion we profess, and the nature of our employment. Old Columella said of the Roman mob, we quit the sickle and the plow, and crept within the city walls, and we ply our hands in circuses and theaters rather than in grain fields and vineyards, with the result that our young men are so flabby, so enervated, that death seems likely to make no change in them. I saw a congregation of Comelus folk, our modern disadvantaged, pants drooping from their posteriors, precious metal in their ears, $200 worth of jackets, sneakers, jerseys, and backward caps. The raised middle finger and obscenities their salutations. Just this morning at the Neon Agora near the interstate. These young men are free and they have leisure, and by world standards, these young Americans, objects of so much liberal solicitude, are not materially poor. The bellies of the most spiritually impoverished humans on the planet are not swollen from want. Their blood is not racked by bacteria. Their clothes are not tattered and worn. In contrast, anyone who saw this valley, its orchards, dams, vineyards, and small towns, might wonder what type of people created such things out of dirt. Who could craft such beauty, feed so many, work so unceasingly in but a century? They were builders and artists, those who gritted off this scrub expanse with 20s, 40s, and 80s. A patchwork of vine and tree, cut across by road, canal, and farmhouse. Even the positive that we do here is now but elaboration on the labor of our forebears. But more often it is not even that, but simply cynicism, nihilism, guilt, and immobility. When the valley's farms are gone, as they must be, I worry. Without the challenge to tame nature, where will the citizen of this current society learn of his true potential, and where will be the physical space, away from town and yet not the empty wild, to refresh his soul? Where will a man learn that if he just works, he can still plant, still grow, and need not feel impotent before nature or man? An empty San Joaquin Valley desert was ugly. The congested sprawl of 20 million will be worse. A checkerboard of a few 100,000 green farms alone was a century of paradise now lost. That is all agriculture is, the fragile balance between the neglect and the ruin of nature. Farming is the mean where man can cultivate the wild and neither destroy it nor be destroyed by it, the rare equilibrium between the work of the mind and labor of the back, the tough community where the autonomous and pragmatic create and then follow the law. For a brief age we harnessed nature here, but did not desecrate it. Through the muscle and sweat of that struggle we were taught to value what we have and not to wish for a great deal more. We now see that the valley, which grew out of weeds, reached a brief perfection, and then reverted to the wild from which it came, a man now doing far more evil through his frenzy than through his earlier neglect. That struggle to create the valley taught us humility and measure. When we sweat to grow plums, we appreciate in turn that our showers are warm, our homes cooled. It is so hard each day to rid a vineyard of weeds, and so we felt victorious that our homes were safe and our police lawful. We who shovel furrows and are scorched so that our vines can drink. All right. Vines can drink. Are amazed that thousands can at last sip chilled water through their refrigerator doors, since we see rodents gnawing at our shoots, viruses sickening our fruits, and frost turning our vineyards black. We arise each morning convinced that nature's brood would like to do the very same to us, and will should we cease the labor of the back. Farmers learned and passed on all that knowledge from the struggle to create this oasis, but the university in this valley is now beneath our feet. Letter 2. The Unseen Enemies of Agriculture. Wisdom from a Relentless and Unknown War. I should have never done this is written in 1780s. I should have never done were I to recount to you all inconveniences and accidents which the grains of our fields, the trees of our orchards, as well as those of the woods are exposed to. If bountiful nature is kind to us on the one hand, on the other she wills that we shall purchase her kindness not only with sweats and labor, but with vigilance and care. These calamities remind us of our precipitous situation. One species of evil is balanced by another. Thus the fury of one element is repressed by the power of the other. In the midst of this astonishing Equipoise. Man struggles and lives. J. Hector St. John de Crevecoeur. Sketches of 18th Century America. Early one May, I walked through our Castle Bright apricot orchard to investigate the damage of an unseasonable spring. I paused beneath the 11th tree of the first row. From there, any observer could sense that on all 484 trees in that acre, there were not more than a few dozen apricots. Maybe 60 apricots instead of 100 tons. $10 worth instead of $40,000 worth. It had rained during bloom. What few flowers that had pollinated soon rotted off anyway. Farther down the row, through the barren trees, my neighbor's new tract house next caught my eye. A former policeman had won a generous and assured disability pension and so had moved to the country. Immediately, he bulldozed our communal road, deeded easement or not, and began encroaching on common ground, now complaining about our 80-year-old power lines, now uneasy about the vague demarcation of legal borders. In general, he was eager to upset the century-long tranquility of his predecessors that was characteristic of the eastern border of our farm. When I reached the end of the apricot row, his garish sign, "For sale by owner, inspection by reservation only," now faded, was still there after a year. They come and they go, my grandfather used to say. I sat for a while on the border of the orchard and looked down its lines and diagonals. Nearby to the north was another urban refugee on a 2-acre ranchero. He was, if the same person still lived in the house, a truck driver who went mysteriously each week or so to Mexico. Ray or Javier something. I never knew, never wished to learn his name. No farmer himself, he came to the open spaces here to park his rig and to raise pit bulls in peace. Satanic-looking pups, born near the equator and